I'm a middle-aged white guy, and I'm not a politician. I'm not a journalist, so I don't make policy or laws, and I'm not doing investigative journalism. But I'm a regular guy who wants to see harmony, and I don't see it, and I don't understand why we're not a more harmonious society. Yeah, and I'm really tired of it. So what I want to do is, I have a lot of reasons I want to do this. For one, I want to demonstrate to my students at the high school where I work. I'm a public school English teacher. I want to show them how a white guy can talk to, I'm going to say people of color, but also anybody marginalized. So I'm going to throw a wide net. One of the best ways we can heal if we have any stress or anxiety is to talk. So I think it's like the American psyche needs to be healed, and I think we can at least start by talking.
Absolutely.
So my questions are simple. What? But I want to be direct too, because I think we tend to dance around issues.
Yeah.
So what's it like being a person of color in America right now?
My biggest thing and how I feel that the problem that we're having is that when you look at African American in general, because of, if it's okay to say, the times of slavery, there's no connection to African Americans to Africa.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, as an Irish person may go to Ireland and have family still there, Russian, Italian. There's no real connection with African Americans back to quote unquote the homeland. That's been stripped and separated from them. So I feel as though they feel like, look, this is our home. This is America, is what an African American is from. We cannot go. And having friends in college that are from Africa that look down upon African Americans because of their experience. Even in, like, I have a cousin who's Jamaican, and they even have slurs for African Americans as, you guys are cotton pickers. Like, they didn't have that. So it's like, when you have this backlash from America and the quote-unquote white population, the police, or the institutionalism of racism when it's coming up for jobs and seemingly not getting positions or getting callbacks for jobs, and it's like you feel, and not saying per me per se, I look at them, and I've looked at this a long time, and they're like, well, where do we come from? If we're not from America, and we can't go back to Africa, the Africans really don't associate with African Americans that well. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They don't feel a connection with African Americans. But we're not wanted here, and we're not wanted there. So where are they wanted in a time? Like, where do you feel that you fit in? So you go through all this in life feeling like you're not part of this society. There's no society that you're from.
Yeah, you covered a lot of stuff, and I wanted to, for the benefit of people who watch, I want to summarize, and I want to ask you a couple questions. First, I wanted to point out, this is true for me as well as everybody I interview. I want to be clear that we're sharing our personal experience, and then, so like I was thinking, you were saying that African Americans feel this way, and I think you're speaking for a large group of people, and then we can imagine that there are people who identify with Africa, but then I also think I've talked to some people of color who are looking into Africa as like where do I belong, like you're suggesting. So there's no basically I'm just trying to point out there's no issue here. It's just we want to make sure that we're clear that we're talking about perspectives, right? But what I think the heart of what you're talking about, which is, from what I can tell from the readings I've done and from just talking to you and talking to some other people of color, it's it, it's like you are American, but there's this rejection of you by your own people, both Americans in general, like forget whatever race, and then within the black community, and then there's no connection for many of you to Africa. So then it's like this lost generation in a sense.
Perfect.
Right. So between
Totally.
between slavery and now, because fortunately you weren't a slave,
Right.
but between the end of slavery to now, you've got this gap. How is it that Americans, you, feel not American, not part of it,
Not part of it.
right?
Like we feel like we are it
Yeah.
as much as anybody, if
And
not
I agree
more
that you are.
than any of the other minority population that has come here. Like when you look at Asian Americans, you have Chinatown.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like
Yes.
they have their
A
place.
place for heritage and culture.
Like when Puerto Ricans
Yeah.
per se come, and I've watched Camden over the last 43, the last 30 years, where East Camden is like Puerto Rican,
Hmm.
like stores. It's like, where are the small businesses? There's no real African American places.
What you're saying is you're seeing shops that are Puerto Rican, and people might even look for those shops to, for culture or other.
Like Federal Street, it's a main strip in Camden. Mostly Puerto Rican.
Yeah.
I mean, the bodegas between Puerto Rican and Dominican.
Yeah.
The bodegas, they have eateries, many restaurants. I mean, we're known for soul food. I
Yeah.
can name you, maybe there's a Corinne's, which is on Haddon Avenue. She's been there forever. And there's a Mom Berta's, who's in Magnolia, as well as now she has a shop in the flea market in Berlin.
Yeah.
But that's it.
Well, do you think that it just occurred to me? I'm thinking, in the Latina, Latinx community, and I am going to interview people from that community. You've got, sure, there are a lot of countries, but then when you think of Puerto Rico, and it's, I guess, Puerto Rico is a territory. It's like you've got this. We can imagine collectively, Americans, what Puerto Rico looks like.
Right.
And when people think of Africa, well, we've made the mistake. I remember when I was in elementary school thinking Africa was a country.
Right.
But you've got 70 some or more.
Yeah.
I think there are more African nations
Yeah.
on the continent than there are states in the United States.
Yeah.
So then, and I remember having a student several years ago from Egypt, and he had fair complexion,
Yeah.
and he came to me, he said, I'm black.
Right.
And I said, okay, you're Egyptian. And he talked to me about what that meant. So then now, and I don't mean to jump around, but if you think Egyptian culture, Americans are going to say, oh yeah, the Egyptians.
Right.
And I don't even think
They don't
that
connect it with
a
being
lot
in
of people,
Africa.
right? And I don't think a lot of people are going to necessarily think African or African American,
Absolutely not.
but it's all part of the same, potentially the same identity.
They're more African than I am. They're in Africa.
Right. Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes, I do. Pause for a second because I was trying to connect that.
You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying?
I do know what you mean. Like, if we want to, we could say you're American, and you don't even have to say anything else. Like, here you are, you're American.
I think that's the biggest thing that we need to get. Black has a connotation of negativity.
Yeah.
When you think of black, you think of night, you think of dark, you think of bad stuff. When you think of white, you think of serenity, you think of cleanliness.
Yeah.
I mean, if we can take those words and say, I'm not black by any means. I'm brown.
Yeah.
You're not white.
No.
You know what I mean? If we could take kind of those words out of it, it wouldn't be so bad. And I think along with those what I've been learning is like the Jim Crow and how it was written. I mean, there's books written on for slave owners on how psychologically to separate their slaves
Mm-hmm.
and to keep them from uprising and
Yeah.
learning.
Yeah.
They weren't allowed to read for years. Um, to get, being in the house and being in the field was two different things. So I'm going to do whatever I can to try to get there. So
Yeah.
if that means my own person that looks like me is having a better life, being closer to the home, and I'm out in the field, then you're separating us now because I'm going to do what I got to do to try to get there.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it caused the big separation amongst African Americans itself with color and mixture and slave owners
Yeah.
raping and having children with African slaves, and then
Mhm.
the kids would come out white. Like when you look at W. Du Bois and different activists that are like so super fair skinned and even blue eyed, and you know what I mean? So it's like we have this thing about hair, good
Mhm.
hair. Oh, Mike, you got good hair. I'm
Well,
like,
what's that mean,
okay,
right?
good hair means that it's not nappy. Like these are
Yeah.
like connotations put on things.
Yeah.
And my own friends were like, well, you got good hair, and we're out getting a haircut. Everybody, like, we go to this one spot, and they're like, well, Mike, you really don't need. All you got to do is throw water and gel in it, and I can do that, and it will curl up. And to them, that's good hair. So I've been said and told, like, well, you don't even need a haircut. And I'm like, well, why not? And then I used to go to school in Cherry Hill, and I went to Russell Knight, and I remember as a kid and get a haircut, and we're like, oh, you like my cut? And they're like, well, you don't even have hair, because they thought hair
Yeah.
was hair was long straight hair.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking like, well, I didn't get it. I don't have hair. So how do I explain in fourth and fifth grade that? Well, like, how do I take that in?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But as it comes to education, I've ran into teachers that I had one teacher at Rutgers. She gave me the hardest time. I mean, I got a D every semester, like 2 semesters in a row. And I remember the third semester, she asked me, and she was the head of the criminal justice department.
Hmm.
And she said, oh, are you still here? And I said, yeah, I'm still here. And I'm going to make it through here.
Well, good for you.
History. So what California wants to start teaching that history.
Mhm.
They want young black kids to start feeling like, yo, you guys are more than just people that go to jail.
Yeah.
And that
would be great.
thugs or criminals.
Yeah.
Start teaching the truths about things so that everyone knows. And it's not a separation between how a kid in the suburbs is taught, and so then when you're going to take all the minority kids in the suburb and teach them how they're being taught in Camden, and then that's like everybody needs the same curriculum across the board.
Yeah, that's 100%.
And
Yeah.
for feelings of positiveness, and it's a shame. And I mean, I watched it because I had the opportunity not to live that way. And it's about conversation. I was told, oh, well, you talk white. And my mom was like, no, you talk right. And I can talk slang.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you could see me tomorrow. I could put the gear on, and I could go hood.
Mm-hmm.
And I know a lot of white kids that can go hood too. But I also know how. So when I get pulled over for something, and I'm like, excuse me, officer, yes, sir. Like, they don't talk that way.
Mm-hmm.
So they automatically, I mean, I feel as though that when you look at animals in general, which we are, a white person is not going to see a black kid like they would see a white kid.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're going to see a white kid as somebody that could be your nephew, your son, and they will be treated a little bit softer.
Yeah.
To compare to, and it goes, but the problem is we have a thing where we call ourselves crabs in a barrel, is that it's been so hard to get this opportunity to get to the house that we'll pull back one of our own to get over,
The only way out of the barrel is to climb on
Right.
someone else.
and that's what we do.
So I want to bring this back again to the heart of the interviews. Asking, listen, as a white neighbor, as a I'm just saying what I am: a neighbor, an educator, a friend, colleague. As you know, I guess what I'm thinking is where the circles I live in. How can somebody like me, and even if it's just one of those groups, how can we help? We're more alike than we're different. I would go a step further personally and say, like, we're the same. We're the same in certain fundamental ways, right? I mean, and we could do it biologically. We breathe the same air. We bleed red. That's what people will say. We're all human beings. And then the danger with saying we're all the same is that, then it suggests that we're not all suffering differently, because we are, and there's no question. I think about white privilege. That's something that apparently white people are afraid to talk about. But I was talking to my friend Michael, another friend of mine. I guess I think of you as a friend now. And I've known him for about 6 years now. We were neighbors in Cinnaminson. Michael Brown, when he was shot, I checked in with my neighbor, and what I told him recently is when I see a black person get gunned down by the police in the news, there has never been one moment when I felt nervous for my own safety. And that's white privilege. Like, now, it's not that I don't sit there gloating in that and like saying, hey, I'm great and I'm fine, the hell with the rest of you. It's different. My concern, and I don't mean to suggest that I'm some sort of giant compassionate person. I just mean my concern goes to my friends who are people of color. And like you're not safe.
No.
And I want to say another thing too, because I really feel strongly about this. We have a I don't know if you saw it. I don't think you walked past our house, but we have a Black Lives Matter. It has like several other things on the sign, like love is love and other stuff. And we, two things about that. We put the sign up, and I said to my wife, it says we believe in this house, and I said I want to take that off because these aren't beliefs. Like the if you want to, anyone wants to say Black Lives Matter is a political group. That's not what I'm talking about. Like that's not the conversation I want to have. People of color, you want to say that, then fine. People of color matter. Love is love. These are truths. I wanted to put a sign next to it. We support our local police, and the reason, I don't know if it immediately makes sense why I want to do that. I think that's the tension. And do I support? Yeah. I want law and order. I don't want people being chased down with guns who have maybe a mental health crisis. I don't want people of color to be targeted unfairly. But this idea that we're polarized, like we're against each other. So I've noticed this. We start seeing Black Lives Matter signs go up, and then we support the local police go up. And I think, well, they don't have to be mutually exclusive. How about we support our local police, and we would like to see reforms that everyone seems to see are necessary.
It's almost like a cliche. It's almost like you can't support the police if Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, and that can't be true. There are black police officers, and
my father was. I come from a family of criminal justice. Like my dad was a cop. My uncle, my mom's cousin, my second cousin, he was a detective.
So I'm going back to this question: what can a white person in a neighborhood do? And this is the thing that I want to just mention my struggle. I created a context here. Now, if I didn't have cameras, or if I didn't go through Julia, if I didn't set up a context, how would it have felt if I saw you on the street and I said, hey, I just wanted to talk to you because I can't stand what's going on in the news? Would that have gone okay with you? So we could do that. Yeah. So we can talk to each other. We can.
And my brother told me that prejudice is prejudge.
Right.
The best thing we can do, or a white person can do, is not prejudge.
Yeah.
Not prejudge. And honestly, it comes from the first things that come out your mouth.
Yeah.
When I speak the way I speak, it doesn't push a form of combativeness or